Hello everyone, I'm MG and today I wanted to talk about talent. There are many people that are threatened by this concept. There are many misconceptions about that word. Talent, the dictionary definition is someone with a natural ability to be good at something, especially without being taught. So that just means at a very young age they show some kind of predisposition or tendency to be really good at drawing, at singing, at cooking, at dancing, whatever it is, and it's weird for their age. Yeah, that's what talent means. And there are many people that are threatened by this concept and they get all crazy when someone says that they are talented, like if that was an insult and if that was ignoring their hard work, because many people do not know the difference. Now, there are people who plainly say that talent does not exist at all, and I think those people are so threatened by this concept that they prefer to ignore their existence because it's easier. And well, if it works for them, that's awesome. Let me explain. So talent is like for prodigies, for gifted people. If talent does not exist, why there are people like Misty Copeland? Be aware that the people that I'm going to mention also worked really hard, so just don't get triggered and hear me out first. For example, Misty Copeland is the first African American woman to be named principal dancer at American Ballet Theater. She was 13 years old when she entered the ballet world. These children from ballet have to start dancing at 3 years old, and they start their serious training at the age of 7. So when Copeland started, she was 13 years old. She was already too old for this. But her teacher, Cynthia Bradley, spotted Copeland's potential. She had a talent. Even if people get triggered by this, she had a natural ability. She hadn't worked before, and they admitted her even though she was so old. It was also because Misty Copeland, even though she had never had contact with the ballet world, she was fascinated by it. As I said, she started when she was very old, and she started working really hard, and now she's one of the best ballerina dancers in the whole world. And that was because she worked her talent. What I'm trying to say here is that talent does exist. There are very few people who have it just naturally, like Misty Copeland. There are gifted people in the world. Now, many people do not like to admit that talent exists because that can give other people an excuse to being lazy. Just imagine these girls that started by the age of 3 to practice ballet, and there comes this Misty Copeland that took so little to get good at this ballet thing. How do you think these girls feel? They feel discouraged, right? Because they have been working so many years, and there comes this talented new girl that's better than them, even though she hasn't worked that hard, at least at the beginning. And of course that's something that many girls won't feel good about. Now the question is, do I think, or is it possible for someone with a strong discipline and very hard work to surpass a talented person? And I think, yes, I think especially someone who hasn't got the talent is like they already are more motivated to pursue their dreams, to work hard, while the talented person has this tendency to be lazy because everything comes easy to them. And that's why you see so many kids in the school failing even though they are very smart, because they are lazy and they didn't pay attention, because it's so easy to them that sometimes they do not think it's worth their time, while someone who has it difficult may have to study more. And later in life, when you ask that person 2 years later what that subject was about, the one that worked harder will have more idea of what happened than the people who was like talented and didn't care. So yeah, discipline is really an amazing skill. I think another thing that happens is that many people do not know what talent really means, and they confuse it for something else. For example, there are many artists that draw really well at a very young age, but it's only because they started at a very young age, like even a younger age, and they worked harder than everyone else. And then in the news they come up as these child prodigies, but it's only because they have worked more than everyone else. Like while everyone was watching TV or playing video games, they were drawing all the time. So of course they are better than other people at a very young age. And what I mean by this, like for example, the example that I used, Misty Copeland, she would have been no one if she didn't practice. So talent can only get you so far. If a talented person does not work their skill, it is completely useless. Besides, talented people are usually exceptions. And as I already said, there are people that confuse what it means. For example, in Bakuman, just at the age of 15, these two guys wanted to make manga, which are Japanese comics, Japanese stories with drawings. And they started to get serious, and they were like just practicing, like fooling around a little, just figuring out some things. And they saw this article in a magazine that a genius mangaka of just 15 years old, the same age as them, had published a story and had won a prize in a competition. And when these two average guys were reading this article, they saw that this other 15-year-old dude had amazing drawings, had an amazing story, and he was the same age as them, and he had already accomplished so much. And the world was amazed because he was just 15 years old, and everyone was saying like, wow, he's a prodigy, he's such a talented person. But what they didn't know is that this talented person was not actually, he wasn't born with this. What he had was a very deep love of drawing and making stories. And he had some little distractions in his childhood that he spent every minute drawing, every minute creating stories. He didn't have TV, he didn't have friends, he lived in the countryside, so every minute, every hour was spent creating manga, creating Japanese comics. So of course by the age of 15 he had used so much time that he had in following his dreams, so he was better than everyone else his age, because the other kids, the two average kids that are reading this article, for example, had spent their childhood like, yeah, they had created some stories, they had like drawn some comics, like the main character had a very earnest love for drawing from a very young age, but they weren't as serious. They were more distractions for them because they lived in the city, they did have friends, they did play video games all the free time they had. They had many distractions, just it was comfortable for them to not, like, drawing requires a little bit of effort. Well, it requires a lot of effort. So between watching TV, just laying in your back, watching something created by someone else, it's very comfortable, really. So yeah, these two guys also read this description this genius kid wrote, and this kid was saying like precisely what I said, that he had spent every minute drawing and that he didn't waste time so much as as other teenagers playing video games. And the main character, who's this average guy who starts to work hard by the age of 15, was really angry. He felt it like a personal provocation because that was true for him. He was really in love with drawing, in love with the idea of becoming a comic artist from the time he was little, and he had like given up in his dream and started playing video games non-stop. So of course he wasn't as ahead of the game as this Nizuma guy. That's the name of the genius guy. And if you haven't read Bakuman, I really recommend it. If you want to write a comic, any kind of comic, I think it's really interesting, and like just the first chapter, it will probably talk to you in ways that nothing else has done before, if you want to make comics, of course. But I'm getting sidetracked here. So yeah, what I'm telling you is that two things. Talent does exist. Number two, there are people who are confused as talented, but they are not. It's just because they have worked so hard that they are better than everyone else at a younger age or at a faster rate because they have worked more. And number three that I want to talk about is that you shouldn't feel threatened by those gifted people or these other people who have worked harder than you in the past, because you can start now, or you may have already started and you're like, yeah, I draw once a week and maybe when I get inspired, and you can stop that. You can become better than those other people if you work harder than them. That's a very strong conditional because they are probably obsessed, so you really should start working harder to become better than them. And what I want to take from this video is, even though there exist talented people that are naturally gifted a little bit, and even though there are people that have worked in the past maybe harder than you can recover. You can work stronger and harder. You can have an amazing work ethic, and while everyone's sleeping, while everyone is taking power naps, while everyone is playing video games and going to the movies like 3 times a week or watching movies 3 times a week, you are working. In any example in life, you will see that hard work and discipline and work ethic can really beat talented people or people that have maybe worked a longer time but not as hard as you. So you can excel at work ethic and you can beat them. get that pencil, get that tablet, and with everything that you paint, draw, or maybe you're watching and you do something else, at making comics, at making songs, whatever you do, you can beat those talented people, because their talent only gets them a little far. If they do not work as hard as you, they will not stand a chance. If there are 3 levels to become excellent, imagine like they conquer level A when they were young. So you can conquer level A too very fast, because that's only the beginner part. Like Misty Copeland, that talented ballerina, conquered level A so quickly compared to other girls, but she had to conquer level B and C with the same hard work as everyone else. And that's what I mean. There exist talented people. They are not superheroes. They are not superheroes that you have to control to feel better about yourself. You have to work harder than them, yeah. Does it feel unfair? Maybe. But in a way, that lack of talent is also an advantage, because you're so used to having to work hard for your dreams that you're already better at working hard and having a work ethic than most talented people. Talent is also related to how much you love something. So if you're passionate about something, you're going to become good at it because you love it so much that you dedicate so much time to it, so much effort to it, and it doesn't feel a burden because you love it. Sometimes it's tiring, sometimes it's stressing, especially if you're ambitious and you have big goals, but it's worth it because you love it so much. You have to get started to be great. Most successful people in the world have worked really hard. Martin Luther King, he worked so hard. Misty Copeland, she was talented, yes, but she has worked so many hours. Her life was something that you look at her life and it was exhausting. But she loved it so much that it was worth it. And so many ballerinas had started from the age of 3 years old. And it's a very, very strict training. And that you can do that as well, like as an artist. Also work smart, of course. Everyone can become an amazing artist. They only have to put the hours. Well, yeah, that's the end of this video, and I really hope you liked it. Again, this is my opinion. If you want to prove me otherwise in a very polite way, you can put it in the comments. And I really hope you enjoyed this kind of video, because I will put up more videos like this in the future, so consider subscribing in that red button over there. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it. Yeah, that is all for me now, and good luck. Bye!